Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Vornich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechphilly.com, and as you can see now, columnist for the Jewish Press.
Right, I'm having a lot of fun doing all of that, and my column in the Jewish Press is called Albany Beat, where I talk about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. But with us today is someone who's also contributed to the Jewish Press. He's a man after my own heart. He's a freelance journalist, and he also runs a campus a program on the UAlbany campus. We got Rabbi Gavriel Haran on the show. Welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you. Really a pleasure to be here.
Oh, that's great. So tell us just briefly what you do over at the UAlbany campus.
So for the past 4 years, I've been working for an organization called AISH, which is a international Jewish organization, outreach organization focused in Jerusalem, is yeshiva in Jerusalem, for people that don't really have a Jewish education. And I was hired to come out to college campus and sort of run classes and trips to Israel to teach people from unaffiliated backgrounds more about Judaism.
I've never been to Israel, so if you're taking people to Israel, let me know.
Oh, yeah?
You know, it's one of those things. But you have a really varied background. I mean, I was just shocked when I was doing the research, the background on you. You really wanted to be a journalist. I mean, that was a real passion of yours. You wanted to be in the theater and the arts because you went to LaGuardia High School, which was the after School for the Performing Arts. They renamed it LaGuardia High School, I guess.
So, well, it's music and art, actually, originally.
Okay.
Music and art. My father actually went to music and art many, many years before.
So were you not religious at that point, or
Correct.
did you? Okay, so what was life? What are the differences in life?
Would you want to hear a little bit about the story?
I'd love to. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll tell you just a little bit. Can't tell everything. The rest is online. This is just a...
what happens at LaGuardia stays at LaGuardia? Is that it? Okay.
So, no, well, that was... I had an art background. My father's a musician, professional musician, and I studied art. My sister also went there for art. And our family was not particularly involved in Judaism growing up. Sort of long story short, my father was born in, I think you met my father one time. My father was born in Czechoslovakia during the war, and he was hiding during the war with his parents, and in order to keep him safe, they didn't tell him he was Jewish. And after the war, they miraculously survived, him, his mother, his father, his grandparents.
So we're talking about the war, the Holocaust?
The Holocaust,
and
correct.
we're talking about that he was not in a concentration camp, he was hiding, or he was? Or?
Right. My father and his parents went into hiding at the beginning of the war, or probably at the end of the war, actually. Czechoslovakia was invaded right at the beginning of the war, but they only started deporting Jews towards the end of the war. And him and his mother were in hiding in a bunker in the woods. His father was separated from them. He went to look for their grandparents in another town and was wounded, and they were separated for the rest of the war. Him and his mother were in hiding, and the story, it's really an amazing story. My father got sick one day, and his mother had to smuggle him through the woods to the doctor in town, and while they were in town, the Nazis found the bunker and took the rest of his relatives away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my father was 3 years old at the time, and him and his mother were alone with nobody. And in this town, they ended up finding a family who took them in, passed them off as non-Jewish relatives, and they survived till the end of the war.
And when was your mother reunited with her husband?
My grandmother. Right after the war ended, they were reunited.
But they didn't have like cell phones then. So
yeah, they must have been in correspondence because my grandfather was hidden by relatives of the same family in another town.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these were your grandparents that were dealing with your father?
Correct.
And then your father, okay, so then,
so
when did your father meet your mother? When did that happen here in America?
Yeah, so after the war, when my father was 9, they got visas to come to America, and they still didn't tell him he was Jewish, because it was very hard after the war. It was even, many Jews lost their lives after the war coming back to their property, to their houses. So his parents didn't tell him he was Jewish. And in fact, he has memories of going and praying in the woods, Yom Kippur.
Oh.
And he didn't know what it was, but he remembers going to the woods in hiding. Even after the war, they were still clandestine.
Clandestine.
Clandestine, right? So So basically, my father came to America when he was 9, and his parents sent him to a yeshiva. But they never explained to him that he was Jewish. And he basically grew up hating Jews. He grew up in the environment
Right.
of post-war Europe. So,
So what was your grandparents' name, and how did Haran? I mean, obviously that's an Americanization
Right.
of it. So
it's actually a Czechization, if that's a word.
yes,
The original name was Berggren.
okay,
And after the war, my father was told that they didn't want to sound German,
right,
which obviously is not the truth. They didn't want to sound Jewish. They just didn't tell him that because
Right.
he didn't know he was Jewish still. When he came to America, so they told him to change the name to Haran. Berggren means Green Mountain. Haran means mountain in Czech, which is interesting because in Hebrew, Har means mountain as well. I don't know if there's a connection there or not.
I
We
love
always
this.
try to connect Hebrew words to all the languages.
I
in
love the
world.
story.
It's
That's
actually
wonderful.
interesting. It's interesting because Rashi, one of the medieval commentaries on the Torah, quotes Czech at one point. He quotes Canaan, Lashon Canaan, which is Czech language or Slovak language,
Yeah.
Slavic language, maybe I should say. It's interesting.
So what was your name before Gabriel?
Gabriel.
Gabriel. Oh, Gabe.
Yeah.
Gabriel. Okay. And
But if you didn't have that much of a Jewish, upbringing, or his father, why did he send you to the yeshiva? That's fairly
Oh,
Jewish,
so my-
very strong,
again,
Jewish-minded.
My father went to yeshiva when he came to America
Why did they send them there?
because
I mean,
they were Jewish. They were
Yeah.
Jewish immigrants. They were traditional Jews.
your grandparents
My
were
grandparents.
traditional Jews, right?
My father, on the other hand, didn't know anything because he didn't know he was Jewish. One day he found out in yeshiva, wait a minute, when he put two to two together, he didn't know English, he didn't know Hebrew, he didn't know what was going on. It took him over a year before suddenly he knew enough to figure out where he was. It hit him and he was very, very upset because he really grew up hating Jews. That was his upbringing. So he basically vowed to not give us a Jewish education for that reason.
Oh, wow.
So we did not have really much of anything. I didn't go to Hebrew school. I didn't really have much of a bar mitzvah. So
Wow. So is still time to make up for all that? isn't
yeah,
it?
I always tell my students, I never had really much of a bar mitzvah, but I said every day a bar mitzvah is really just a message that of taking responsibility as a Jewish adult, right? The ceremony doesn't really mean that much. It happens when you turn 13. So I say, so really the ceremony is just making a statement that I'm a Jewish adult. I take responsibility for the Jewish people. That's what adulthood is all about in Judaism. So I say I'm making a statement of Jewish adulthood every day, so I don't really need a bar mitzvah.
But you're also being called up for an aliyah is something
Sure.
that you that is the, I guess, ceremony that
when
you
Rabbi
pass it.
Simon's kind enough to call me up.
That's right. Okay. So
it's
that's
very interesting that you say art, because generally I wouldn't think art and rabbis go together, because different kind of the brains, the fine arts, and rabbi is more legalistic. But I actually was just reading an interesting book, and again, also same kind of idea. Everybody has this different story, of course, but just a person who didn't have too big of a Jewish upbringing and now became a rabbi. And he also was, like he says, I was in an art major. And I also thought art, usually, you don't think of, an artist person's a feely person.
Right.
And to be a rabbi, it just takes
Well,
so much legalistic.
well, I have to tell you that
mind.
as a non-rabbi, I always thought of a rabbi as being an art form. So, so it's an art form to be a rabbi because of all the intricacies that you have to work out to survive as being a rabbi. It's an art form.
You have to be a
It's-
dancer.
You know,
Yeah.
you
No,
really.
it's funny. I say that I often joke that I'm not a real rabbi. I just play one on TV.
TV,
So
that's
I'm
right.
I'm finally getting the opportunity to do that. But the sort of the real
Okay.
answer to the question is being like a campus rabbi. At least my style of campus rabbi is really more art than legalistic. It's more the art of being able to take ideas and bring them down to earth and connect to people.
So when was the epiphany and the transformation from Gabriel to Gabriel? And that must have been one heck of a conversation that you had with your folks.
It's true. It's true. So again, long story short, I was in college after high school, doing basically the regular thing, and I decided to take a semester off to travel, and I wanted to find myself, and I had a real deep yearning for spirituality, and obviously the first place I looked was the Far East. Judaism was not on my map of options, and so I didn't make it to the Far East. Actually, I decided to travel around Europe and had a dream of eventually going to India. And after 6 months of traveling, came back home for a few months, and someone told me about Birthright, which was starting up that year.
Oh.
January 1st, 2000. So I took them up on the opportunity and was very impressed by the experience.
So how old are you now?
Hey.
29.
You know, it's funny. It's funny.
Same age as me, probably.
It's I'm getting close to one of those milestone years.
30?
I wish, but
You look 30. You know.
thank you. I appreciate that. It's getting a little gray here, but I keep
That's
thinking that I'm
premature
approaching
gray.
30, even though I approached that a long time ago.
Really? What are you approaching?
Almost 40. We'll see.
Oh, that's
a
not
couple of
big
years
deal.
from now.
You're a kid. You're still
I
young.
appreciate it. I hope that I continue to have that youthful energy.
You do, absolutely. I mean, I see the way you. And how many children you have now?
4.
4. Okay, because it said 3 here at the time. But you
Keep
know what?
up with the news.
That's
You
right.
didn't make it onto the LinkedIn. Yeah.
But I wanted to just say that you had this job in Israel as a content manager at Strategy CMS. But you were like into computers and content management.
I wasn't really into computers. Again, I'll just fill you in a little bit more on the story, as I think it's interesting.
It's all interesting.
I was studying in yeshiva for many years, and I promised my wife after I finished the smicha program, the rabbinic program, that
This is at the Derech HaMelech Institute?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I told her that I would start trying to work a little bit, and actually before I got married, I had no idea what I was going to do for a living. I never finished college because I took off that semester, which turned into 15 years. I'm actually getting my master's now, but
really?
yeah. But and I was trying to figure out what to do, and I always had a talent for writing and a passion for writing. I used to do all throughout college and high school. I was always very into writing, creative writing, and essays and papers. And in yeshiva, I wrote the Purim Spiel, just like a little funny play that So everyone said, you have a talent for writing. Why don't you try writing? So I took them up and I wrote a story, actually a Hasidic story about Rav Aaron of Karlin, and it was published. And then I heard another amazing story that happened to someone in Hurricane Katrina. I wrote that up, and it was also published. And then I met someone who offered me a job as a journalist for Mishpacha magazine. And that was right before I got married. So I started doing that here and there. And then after I finished rabbinic studies, so I started branching out as a freelance writer. So I was doing content writing for websites. I was working for the Jewish Press, Hamodia magazine, different things. Aish.com, actually, I got started with Aish. And
well, like I said, you're a man after my heart, because I'm a freelance writer. This is what this is what we do. So
I'll tell you the interesting thing. I liked what I was doing a lot. I enjoyed the writing. I got to meet with incredibly interesting people. I had a column for the Mishpacha magazine on nonprofits and kiruv work, outreach work, and so I was interviewing rabbis all over the world, doing amazing things, and I started doing grant writing for JDC, the Joint Distribution Committee, and it was amazing assignments I was working on. And as I was doing this, I kept thinking, I'm stuck in this office writing about these amazing people, but I would much rather be out there doing something amazing. So I said to my wife, you know what, our kids are young, let's go out and try and make the world a better place.
And that's where you hooked up with Aish?
Yeah. So they found me.
Well, you were writing for them.
They did different branches. Yeah.
Okay. It's huge.
Yeah, it's a bigger thing.
You helped win a $75,000 grant from an American Jewish Federation for Haredi Employment Organization in Israel?
That sounds right, yeah.
Okay, that's pretty impressive.
I mean, among other, I did a lot of grant writing for different organizations. So.
Okay. Well, there really isn't too many grant writers in this area. I mean, it's always people looking for grant writers. This is where we have our biggest gap in this area, in the Capital District. I can't tell you how many phone calls I get that says, can you be a grant writer? And you look on the employment lists, and they're always looking for grant writers, always openings for that. So just to, not that you're looking for another job. I'm just saying, I'm just letting you know that that's really is a fertile market here.
It's an important job.
So what? So when you're in marketing, a lot of people look at marketing as trying to put something over on someone. It's trying to make something look so much more tasty and more beautiful than it really is. What was your marketing experience? Because you don't seem like the type of guy who would want to do something like that.
You know, it's funny. I was marketing nonprofits for the most part.
Oh, okay.
And it's a very...
But you marketed this product, Eden Nuts Nut Butters.
Yeah, you remind me of this difficult time in my life.
Oh.
I never even got to taste those nut butters.
Oh, no.
But, they sounded good.
They sounded good, okay.
I'll tell you, that was really when I was, for a little while, I was trying to do a little bit more work.
Yeah.
Everything since then has been pleasure. But that definitely wasn't my strength.
That was
You're
a
right.
year.
Right.
That was a year that you...
That was hard. That was a hard year. I was also writing about like nuts and bolts for a online hardware store.
Oh, okay.
It's very hard to do.
So what does this quote mean to you? Every man dies, only some men really live.
Brings me back to high school.
Yeah. What does it mean for you?
It's a great quote, actually. I think it still resonates with me that you got to make the best of every moment. You know, like I'm always asking myself, what can I do to really make a difference in this world? How can I use the talents that I have to inspire other people and to really make sure that I use my life to its fullest.
Now you know where the quote came from.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to. It's from the movie Braveheart. So
there was a time in my life that I wanted to become Scottish.
Okay. Well, you know, at a certain age you could do whatever you want. And that's how I got into journalism. Is that I was 20 when I graduated from college. While I was in college, I was still in my late teens, so I said, "Hey, I could do whatever I want," and I found my niche.
Wow.
And
now you're on the Jewish View over here. That's your niche, all right.
That's that's part of it, you know.
Top of the food chain.
So what are the other hidden secrets that you have in your history, in your past? I mean, because you have a fascinating life. Yeah. And that's why I was absolutely, you know, anthropology, you studied at Oberlin College. It's Ohio, isn't it? Yeah. So anthropology, like, did you dig it or?
It's archaeology.
Oh, that's archaeology.
No,
okay.
Anthropology. Yeah, it's. I'll tell you, it was really part of a quest. I was actually in the process of making my own major in spirituality. So I was planning on studying anthropology, religion, comparative religions, and art history to try to figure out what's the common denominator, what's the spiritual truth that unites all of humanity.
All right. Now, last year you wrote a column that said, "I'm not white, I'm Jewish." So this is like really current. This should be fresh in your mind. What did you mean by "I'm not white, I'm Jewish"?
So growing up, I always thought of Judaism as sort of baggage. It was just an accident of birth. We happened to have been born Jewish. It didn't mean much. It wasn't particularly relevant. It wasn't particularly spiritual or meaningful. I was a white boy with this Jewish background, which made me even more white. And it was sort of something to be embarrassed about as a child. Growing up in New York City, I remember there was one time an Italian kid in my class who the other kids were making fun of him for being white. He said, "I'm not white, I'm Italian." Oh. And so for me, being Jewish was sort of like being acultural. It didn't really mean anything to me. And at one point, I stopped telling people I was Jewish because I just didn't think it was completely irrelevant. And my journey to Israel and back to Judaism was sort of a realization that not only is Judaism relevant and incredibly spiritual and meaningful, but Jews in ourselves were not. It's not a religion. It's a nation. It's a cultural identity. It's an ethnic identity, and we're a minority. And it's very interesting to realize that we are like the original minority.
With this journey in life that you're going through, that you were telling us about, what's next for you? Or is Asia definitely not your last stop, I would presume, and maybe it might be. I don't want to signal something and jeopardize anything, but I just was wondering, like, you know, do you have an idea in your mind? And I always wanted to own a radio station. I never did that, so
still time over here.
Still time, but
the future is wide open. I don't really know what's next. I'm getting my master's in social work, and I am getting training as a life coach, and I hope to continue to go back into writing at some point. But at the moment, teaching is is really incredible for me.
How do you get along with the other Jewish groups on campus? Because Albany has well, not as large as it used to be, but still has a large Jewish population. How do you all get together? And
That's a great question. So it happens to be there's something around the vicinity of 4,000 Jews on campus.
Yeah.
And we estimate that between all three Jewish organizations, there's L'Chaim, Chabad, there's Hillel, there's a pro-Israel group, and there's Aish. All together,
well, is an Aish pro-Israel group?
There's a particularly pro-Israel group, just Israel activism.
Okay.
And there's Aish, right? All groups are pro-Israel, all of these groups, but
well, what's the name of that? Because we used to have like
Great Danes for Israel.
Great Danes for Israel?
Yeah.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. So,
because Great Danes are not kosher.
Well, even they can be for Israel.
They're big dogs, though. I mean,
big dogs.
Scooby-Doo for Israel. Anyway, there are about 4,000 Jews on campus, and we estimate amongst all three of those groups, there's a maximum, being very generous, 350, 400 students involved.
You say on campus, but is that uptown? I mean, are you saying not
enrolled in the school?
Meaning in the school.
In the school,
yeah.
all right.
I'm not sure what the distribution is.
All right.
That's in SUNY Albany. And again, being really generous, between 300 and 500 are involved at all with anything Jewish on campus.
Pretty much, 10%.
And so we sort of feel that we all could be doing more. When I got there, I don't know that there was as much collaboration.
Right.
Thank God in the past few years, the organization has been working together beautifully. And I think everyone realizes that we all serve different niches.
Well, I know that you get along with people at Shabbos House because you had your son's bris there.
And
so,
I think that was maybe a milestone in Aish Chabad relations in America. So.
Well, I just think that there's it just sent a huge signal that, yes, we're going, you didn't go to the campus center, have food catered in. I mean, you just went to,
I mean, we're very honored that the Rubens invited us. They've been incredible to us since we've been here. And I think in general, we can be so much more successful if we're united. There are so few Jews in the world, and if we fight amongst ourselves, if we don't have unity, there's no chance that we'll succeed. And
when I was on campus, there was a group called RZA, Revisionist Zionist Alliance, or something like that.
I don't believe
doesn't exist anymore. It was RZA/Hillel. So, who's heading up Hillel now, and what do they do?
Rabbi Nomi.
Oh, okay, Manon. Yeah. And is she effective? Is she?
I mean, I think everyone's doing a great job. We can all do more. That's for sure.
Yeah, because you live off campus, where I think Shabbos House is closer to being on campus. Maybe you're also as close, a different part of the campus.
Yeah.
What do you do on campus that excites you? That you like? Do you go to the football games? Do you do something?
Shabbos?
No, they have some. It's not always on Shabbos.
So I'll tell you what we sort of, the way we view our organization is really about education. Other organizations focus a little bit more on the community aspect, building a community, a Shabbos community, or a social community on campus. We're much more focused on education. So we run a Maimonides program, which is a pretty much national program now.
And where do you hold that?
On campus.
Where?
In the campus center.
In the campus center.
We get a room in the campus center, and the goal is really to bring the wisdom of Judaism down to earth to show how it applies to every person in 2016 in Albany, from whatever walk of life. The wisdom of Judaism is very, very relevant.
And how many students do you get coming to your classes?
Usually the program is about 30 to 45 every semester.
Do you work with the Judaic Studies program? No, they're totally separate.
No.
There's no collaboration.
We're not offering credit at the
moment. No,
moment.
you're not, but I'm just saying I'm sorry, the professor,
Professor Trachtenberg?
Trachtenberg. He was on the show once. But he could tell people, oh look, we got Shabbos House, we got Aish, we got the Great Danes for Israel, we got Hillel, and he could, I mean, they got a bulletin board outside.
He's particularly, for whatever reason, is not into pushing any sort of.
So you don't tack up your events at the bulletin board outside his office now?
He hasn't been happy when we've done that.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, we'll have him back on the show. We'll talk to him. Okay, so, but you know what? Do you ever take the show outside of the campus center? There's a place right between the biology building and the Performing Arts Center, a really spiritual landscape there. And I really thought that might be something that, you know, if you take it, and I know that they have some of the social science classes and other classes, they take their students outside, they sit around on the grass, they talk.
When I became a campus rabbi, my dream was to be playing guitar and hanging out outside. Fortunately, in Albany, in normal year, you get about a week of good weather during the college year, so it's not so practical.
What do you do after, like between May and August, let's say?
I'm in grad school currently in the summer.
Do you do anything for your own mental health, like to go away? Do you like to hike? Do you go to the Adirondacks?
I love hiking. Last summer we got to spend a few days at a lake in Pennsylvania, which was incredible.
Okay.
I don't do enough for myself.
Well, you should.
Oh, yeah.
You definitely need that because it helps with your spirituality. It helps with everything else. So.
What are you, the rabbi over here?
It does.
They tell the rabbi how to be spiritual.
I hike up in a place called 13th Lake up in North Creek.
Uh-huh.
And it's like 9 campgrounds run by the DEC, and first come, first serve. So there's no charge or anything. And I've always wanted to have a Shabbos up at 13th Lake. It is absolutely gorgeous up there, wow. And it's so peaceful. So if you like hiking and you want to do something like that, we can. I'm
waiting for my kids to get one year older, and then I'm going to take them camping regularly.
Well, you know, if I could help you show you 13th Lake, it would be, be a pleasure. You know, so I think that this is, you've done so much. You are so well-rounded. You have so much life experience. It's just incredible. So I'm glad that we got to know each other more, and this is great. So keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much for being on the Jewish View, because we have to focus on we have so many politicians, and we have to at least have some rabbinical guests on here to make
well,
sure
just this journey
Jewish.
Of life. I mean, it can relate to so many other people who have gone through that same torment and begin, of how to, what do they call it when you are secular and then you become Baal Tshuva?
Still trying to become a Baal Tshuva.
Yeah. That's why I wasn't sure to use that.
Literally means to return. That's what he's trying to say. You're always returning to God. You're never there.
Okay.
You just always have to keep moving. But thank you for sharing your life experiences and the good work that you're doing on the SUNY Albany, and keep going, and we'll check in with you what you're up to. You always seem like you have some new adventures coming in, and do it with good health.
Continued success, yes,
Great
absolutely.
Especially here in the center of town.
That's right.